Masechet Makkot Daf Yod Gimel, on which we complete the second perek and begin the third perek. So here's the last Mishnah. Kayosebo, Roseach Shegala La'ir Miklato, Verasu Anshe Ha'ir Lechabedo. יאמר להם, רוצח אני. אמרו לו, אף על פי כן, יקבל מהן. שנאמר, וזה דבר הרוצח. So similarly, we'll talk about this word in a second. Let's see the case first. Someone who kills b'shogeg, and he's exiled to the Ir Miklat that he goes to. And when he gets there, the people in that town want to give him an honor. He's a great person, they want to give him some kind of honor. He must inform them, listen, thank you for the honor, but you should know that I am a killer. Although killer, b'shogeg, he did inadvertently. But it means that he was doing something that was negligent. He was speeding, he was doing something that was dangerous, he didn't check all the safety things, and he killed someone. So although it was not premeditated, still, this is a person that's maybe not worthy of getting an honor. So I say, listen, I am a killer. I am not worthy of such an honor. If they say, even so, we know your history, we know what you did, but we want to honor you for something else, some great thing that you did, you helped someone, whatever it is, then he can accept it. As it says, Ze devar haroseach. This is the word of the rosech, and we learned other things from this before, but now we learn devar means the word. He has to say, rosech ani. As long as he informs them of that fact, then if they still want to honor him, he's allowed to accept it. Now this kayosebo is difficult because this does not relate to the previous Mishnah or anything that came before. So the best explanation of these words, kayosebo, is the fact that this Mishnah is repeated verbatim in Masechet Shevi'it. And there it makes perfect sense because the previous Mishnah in Masechet Shevi'it is about someone who borrows money before the Shevi'it, and then after the Shevi'it, the loan is canceled. So the lender is not allowed to ask for the money after the Shevi'it because the loan is canceled. Okay, the lender is not allowed to ask, but what if the borrower comes and says, listen, I want to pay you back. I borrowed $100, right, a couple of years ago before Shevi'it, and now I want to pay you back. So can the lender accept it? The answer is the lender has to say, Shevi'it came and it canceled the loan, so therefore I am not collecting it. He has to say that. If the borrower says, Afa pichen, I know it's canceled, but you know what? I want to give you this money anyway, then the lender can accept it. He can't collect it as a loan, but he can accept it as long as he says it's canceled and the other says Afa pichen. And then the next Mishnah, kayosebo, there's a similar case. So now we understand why it's there, why it says kayosebo, and then it's quoted word for word here, even though the kayosebo here does not relate to anything before, because we're simply quoting the Mishnah as is. Now the Mishnah continues. Ma'alim hayu sachar la'leviyim. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir omer lo hayu ma'alim lahem sachar. If someone kills b'shogeg and has to go to a city of refuge, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he still has to pay rent when he gets there. Shouldn't be for free. It just means that the city will offer him refuge from Goel Hadam. But once he's there, he has to pay for all of his expenses. Rabbi Meir disagrees and says that they do not have to pay rent. That's the purpose of this city. It's a city of refuge to bring people in, and since that's the goal of the city, that's why it's built and that's why it's there. Therefore, you get free rent. If you killed someone and you ran away, we come, we take care of you, we give you refuge, safety, and an apartment. וחוזר לסררה שהיה בה, דיבר רבי מאיר. רבי יהודה אומר, לא היה חוזר לסררה שהיה בה. רבי מאיר is a chiasm here. It says רבי יהודה, רבי מאיר, רבי מאיר, רבי יהודה. So while we're on רבי מאיר, he also says that after the Kohen Gadol dies and the killer b'shogeg goes back home, not only does he go back home, he can return to the same public position of authority that he had before. Whatever he was a Av Beit Din before or something like that. So he can go back to his city and be the governor, the tax collector, whatever he was of that city, the Gabai, and that the position that he had before, according to the Rabbi Meir. He did his time. He atoned for his negligence. He's good. The Rabbi Yehuda, however, says no. He doesn't go back to the service that he occupied before, to the office, because he's a killer. Even though it's accidental, that's it. He doesn't deserve this high honor. He does not go back to his position. Gemara, Amar Rav Kahana, Machloket b'shesh demor sabad lachem liklita, umor sabad lachem lechol sorchachem. Aval ב-42 דברי הכל היו מעלין להם שכר. Rav Kahana says that the controversy, the first controversy here, about whether you have to pay rent or not, that only applies in the 6 designated cities that we listed above, 3 in the Transjordan, 3 in Eretz Canaan itself, because regarding those, it says these 6 cities will be lachem. They will be for you. Now, what does that mean, for you? There's 2 opinions, 2 interpretations. One said it will be for you as a refuge. That's it. It's only going to be a refuge, but you have to pay your way. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Whereas Rabbi Meir says, they're for you means they're for you totally, for all of your needs. This is built for you in case you need it. Like today, if someone goes to jail has to provide for their bed, for food, medical services, and so on. So this is made for you. A criminal, someone who kills b'shogeg, gets free housing there. So it's 2 interpretations of what lachem. However, when it comes to the additional Levite cities, the 42 other cities that are designated for Leviim, but can also serve as a city of refuge, there everybody, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, would agree that there you have to pay rent. This is a Levite city. Leviim are living here. If you want to come there, yes, it can give you refuge, but you have to pay rent. It's a Levite city. The 6, there's at least a machloket, and one opinion says you don't have to pay rent. Amar le Rava, havadai lachem lechol sorchachem mashma. Rava disagrees with Rav Kahana. He says, no, if it says the word lachem means these are designated for you for all of your needs. You don't have to pay any bills when you're there. You get an apartment, you get everything that you need. Ela amar Rava, machloket ב-42, rather Rava says the machloket in the Mishnah is actually regarding the other 42. Demor sabad v'alehem titenu ki hanach liklita. One opinion says that these 42 should be added above these. So when it says above these, okay, it's added in that it's like the 6 cities, but only for the sake of refuge. Otherwise, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, you have to pay. The 6 cities you don't have to pay. The added 42 cities, they also give you refuge, but that's it, not free rent. Whereas Rabbi Meir says, Umor sabad, v'alehem titenu ki hanach, mahanach lechol sorchachem, af hanename lechol sorchachem. Rabbi Meir says, upon them you add just like them. Just like these, your rent is provided for, so to the 42 additional, also your rent is provided for. So that's where the machloket is regarding the 42. Aval b'shesh dibra kol lo hayu ma'alim lahem sachar, but regarding the original 6, those are lachem. For sure, lachem means that everything is provided for you. Chozer laserara shehaya ba. Now, the next part of the Mishnah that says there's also machloket about whether the person who, after he finishes his exile, Kohen Gadol dies, he goes back home, can he get the position of authority that he had before? Tenor Rabbanan. We're going to learn that the similar halacha applies and machloket applies in a different case regarding an Eved Ivri. Someone, let's say he had a position of authority, it was a betin or something in some place, and then he became an Eved Ivri. He couldn't pay a debt, and he had to be sold into slavery. Now he's after Yovel comes, and he goes free. Can he go back to the position that he had before? Maybe not, because now he's already an Eved. Even though he's free, but he still has the history of being an Eved, and an Eved should not have a position of high authority. It's a low status. Tenor Rabbanan. V'shab el mishpachto ve'lechuzat avotav yashuv. The pasuk says regarding an Eved Ivri when he goes back home free after a Jubilee year. Same would apply also after 7 years of service. That he goes back to his family and to the estate of his fathers. Lemishpachto hu shab ve'no shab lema shecheziku avotav diber Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda emphasizes mishpachto. He can go back to his family. He can go back to his land, to his estate, but he cannot go back to the the status of prominence that his ancestors held. Sounds like it's specifically talking about a type of position that is inherited. The father was a nasi, the son becomes a nasi. So this type of thing, no, you lose your right to that. That's what Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Meir omer, af hu shab lema shecheziku avotav, ele chuzat avotav ka'avotav. Rabbi Meir says, no, he can go back to his land and he can go back to the position of authority that his fathers had, because the pasuk says, el chuzat avotav, he goes back to the estate of his fathers, just like his fathers. So he gets the same position of his fathers. So it's not referring only to the ancestral land of his fathers, but even the ancestral status of of his forefather. And so you see a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir regarding Eved Ivri. And then that Braitas ends and says, V'chen bagole. Also regarding someone who goes into exile, because he killed Bishogeg. Keshomed Yashub, Lerabot et haroseach. And how do you know that that's true for another case? Because look back at this pasuk. Veshav el mishpachto ve'elachuzat avotav. We discussed what that means. But then it repeats Yashuv. Why do you have to say that? Leave that word off. You already said Veshav. This is a repetition of a verb. So this means it's referring to a different case. There's someone else who also goes back in the same way and will apply the same machloket, and that is the goleh. Good. So now the Gemara will explain further. Mai vechen begoleh. What do you mean? And this is true also regarding the refugee. Kedetanya. Now we have a braita parallel to our Mishnah that explains it a little bit more. Yashub arosech el eres achuzato. Eres achuzato hushab ve'eno shav lema shecheziku abotav. Tibre Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir omer afu shav lema shecheziku abotav. Gamar shiba shiba mehatam. The pasuk regarding someone who kills Bishogeg says that after the Kohen Gadol dies, the killer will return to his ancestral land. What does that mean? He returns to his ancestral land, the land itself, yes, but to the official position of authority that his forefathers had, no, that he doesn't get, only the land. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir, however, says he returns to what his forefathers had in the same way that he had them. And that includes not only the land, but also the position of authority. And all this we learn from a Gezer Shava, Shiva, from the from here, from the Eved Ivri. Just like over here it says Yashuv, and over here it says Yashuv. So this word was extra, and since it's extra, so it's panui, it's available to make a Gezer Shava. And so we say here, just like whatever you say about Eved Ivri, whether like Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, whatever you say about that, will make a Gezer Shava, that the same law is true also for a killer Bishogeg. Hadran alach Eluhen Hagolin. We next begin the third perek with the new Mishnah, Eluhen Halokin, Haba lachoto, v'alachot abiv, v'alachot imo, v'alachot ishto, v'al eshet achi, v'al eshet achi abiv, ve'al hanida. The following people deserve to get lashes. Someone who sleeps with his sister, or with his father's sister, or with his mother's sister, so two types of aunts, or with his wife's sister, that's one sister-in-law, or with the brother, with his brother's wife, so two types of sisters-in-law. Or Eshet Achi Aviv, another type of aunt, his father's brother's wife, and also any woman who's nida, even with his own wife. Now, this list until here is interesting because all these people are also deserving of karet, not only lashes. It is also significant that it starts with Achoto, his sister, because that's a pasuk in Vayikra 20 that specifically says that is deserving of karet, and that's going to come into play in the discussion in the Gemara, which means that all of these here arayot, one is deserving of both karet and also lashes. So the Gemara is going to discuss who is the author of this Mishnah who thinks that one gets lashes and karet as well. Next, the next series is only lashes, not karet. Almana lekohen gadol, gerusha v'chalusa lekohen hejot, mamzeret unetina l'Yisrael, bat Yisrael nenatin ulemamzer. If a kohen gadol marries an almana, they get lashes. By the way, in all of these scenarios, both the man and the woman get lashes. So the almana and the kohen gadol. Or if a regular kohen marries a gerusha or a chalusa, that's lashes. Or if a kosher Jew would marry a mamzeret or a netina, netina, and netina is a Gibeonite that converted under false pretenses, and they were natinas to be assigned. They were assigned to be woodcutters or low-class people, and so they cannot marry a Yisrael, or a bat Yisrael, a woman who is kosher of a kosher family, cannot marry a male who is a natin or a mamzer, and that would deserve lashes. Now, almana ugrusha chayvin aleha mishum shene shemot, girusha v'chalusa no chayv ela mishum achat bilvad. To clarify one of these last cases, if a kohen marries a woman who is both an almana and a girusha, that could happen. Right? She might be married to one man, and then that man dies, and then she's married to a second man, and she gets divorced from that man. And so, if a kohen gadol should marry someone who is both an almana and a girusha, so then that's two separate prohibitions, and he will get lashes, two sets of lashes. However, if a kohen, and this could be any kohen, marries a woman who is both a gerusha and a chalusa, which could be she was a gerusha, they divorced, and then she married someone else, and then he died without children, and the brother did chalitza. So in that case, he is liable only to one count of lashes, because chalusa, the prohibition of a kohen with a chalusa, is not explicit in the Torah. It's derived to be similar to gerusha. In fact, some say it's d'Rabbanan. Here it sounds like it's d'oraita. Either way, it's only derived from gerusha. It's a subcategory of gerusha, and therefore it's like a woman who's, let's say, divorced twice. You wouldn't, if she married a kohen, they wouldn't get two sets of lashes, but only one. So same thing with gerusha and chalusa, only counts as one prohibition. Hatameh shachal et hakodesh ve'habal hamikdash tameh ve'ochel chelev ve'dam ve'notad upigul ve'tameh. If a person who is tameh eats holy food, that is a prohibition by lashes. Or someone who enters into the sanctuary while he is tameh, or someone who eats chelep, prohibited fat, or blood, or notad is a sacrifice that one is allowed to eat, but it passed its due point. You have to eat it, for example, a shelamim, a day, a night, and a day, and it's past due. Or pigul is a sacrifice where the kohen who was preparing one of the main four services had in mind while he was preparing it that he would eat it after the time, or if the sacrifice itself is tameh. This case was when the person is eating a sacrifice while the person is tameh, but also if the sacrifice itself is tameh, that deserves lashes. V'ashochet uma'aleh bachutz, someone who slaughters a sacrifice outside of the sanctuary, or he offers it outside of the sanctuary, not allowed. V'achil chametz b'Pesach, eating chametz on Pesach is also liable to lashes. Either someone who eats or does melacha on Yom Kippur gets lashes, and some of these are also karet, by the way. Interestingly, Yom Kippur is less severe than Shabbat. Shabbat violation gets sikila as capital punishment. Yom Kippur, although everybody says it's the holiest day of the year, in a way, Shabbat is even holier, and that has a more severe punishment. If someone makes the oil of anointing, if that's supposed to be used only for the Bet HaMikdash, and one makes it for non-sacred use, you're not allowed. Also, if one makes ketoret, when the same formula with the same ingredients as is done in Bet HaMikdash, you can't do that at home. Or shemen hamishcha, the oil that's used for anointing. All of these cannot be made at home. These are special, and because they're special, they can only be used for the Bet HaMikdash, and this would be degrading to them to say, I'll make my own ketoret at home. All these things are not allowed. And also, someone who eats an animal that's a nevela or a terefa. Nevela died without shechita. Terefa, even if you did shechita, but it would have died within 12 months. It has a hole in the lung or a problem like that, or other creepy crawlies that are not kosher, receives lashes. Achal tebel l'maaser rishon shelo nitela terumato maaser sheni v'ekdesh shelo niftu. Tebel, produce that you didn't take terumah maaser. Someone eats it, that's lashes. Or let's say you took maaser rishon, and the Levi has to then take terumah. If you didn't take terumah, it didn't do everything. It's like tebel. Or maaser sheni has to be in Yerushalayim, or you can redeem it for money. So if you didn't do that, if you didn't redeem it for money and you eat it outside of Yerushalayim, or hekdesh, also that you take and don't redeem, all that is liable to lashes. Now, a question regarding the tebel. How much would you have to eat to be liable to lashes? Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol shehu, even the tiniest bit. Chachamim Omrim kezayit. Chachamim say, no, the size of an olive. Amar lehen Rabbi Shimon, Yetem modim li be'ochel nemala kol shehu chayav. Rabbi Shimon says, I think even the smallest bit, because wouldn't you agree that if someone ate an ant, even if it's tiny, then one would be liable to lashes. One is liable to lashes for eating a bug, and that could be tiny. So shouldn't it be the same for tebel? So the rabbis answered, no, an ant is different because that's its entire creation. It's a whole item. It's a whole animal. So even though it's smaller than the regular shiur of kezait, because you're eating an entire being, entire creation, so one is liable. That's why an ant is that way. And so Rabbi Shimon responded, I knew you would say that. So now you fell into my trap. A kernel of grain is also the same thing. A 1 wheat kernel, that's how it grows. It's a whole item, even though it's less than a kezait. If you eat a whole item, then one is liable to lashes. Gemara. Chayave karetot katane, chayave mitot betin la katane, matnitin maneh. The Gemara notices that the Mishnah includes prohibitions for which one would be liable to karet. And so that means you get if you get karet, you also get lashes. However, the Mishnah did not list any prohibitions for which a court, betin, here of a human court, would kill a person. So who is the author of the Mishnah? We're going to see 3 opinions, and we're looking for the opinion that says that when someone gets chayav mitat betin, what gets capital punishment in a human court, then they only get capital punishment and no lashes. But if they do something for which one is liable to karet, they get karet and lashes. Who says that? The answer is Rabbi Akiva de Tanya. So let's see the 3 opinions. Echad chayav karetot ve'echad chayav mitot betin. Yeshno bichlal malkut arba'im. Divrei Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael says that whether one makes a sin for which one is liable to karet, or someone makes a sin for which one is liable to capital punishment in a human court, they also get lashes. That's quite an amazing thing. If someone commits murder or violates Shabbat or Avodah Zarah or whatever it is, something that they get liability of capital punishment, they also get lashes. And karet also gets lashes. So that's Rabbi Ishmael's opinion. Rabbi Ishmael cannot be the author of our Mishnah because our Mishnah only lists karet laws and not mitat betin laws. And if the author was Rabbi Ishmael, then it would include also examples of people that are liable to capital punishment that also get lashes. So he's out. Rabbi Akiva Omer Chayave Karetot Yeshno Bichlal Makkot Arba'im. Rabbi Akiva says only those who get karet also get lashes or get 40 lashes, but not if they're liable to capital punishment. So Rabbi Akiva is a good candidate to be the author of our Mishnah. And he gives his reasoning. Shima su teshubah betin shel ma'ala mochalin lahen. Chayave mitot betin and no bichlal makot arba'im. Shima su teshubah and betin shel mata mochalin lahem. Now we have a general rule that you can't get 2 punishments for 1 crime. Now, Rabbi Ishmael did say you get 2 punishment, apparently, because it's mitat betin and also lashes. Okay, Gemara will discuss that. But Rabbi Akiva, he also has this general rule. However, when it comes to karet, there is always a way to get out of karet, and that is by making teshuvah. If someone makes teshuvah, then the heavenly court will forgive that person and there will be no karet. Since you can always get out of karet if you wanted to and you made teshuvah, therefore we leave that punishment on the side, and therefore we consider it as if it's only lashes. So if the person decides not to make teshuvah, they'll get karet and lashes. But we don't consider that 2 punishments because sometimes he gets karet, sometimes he doesn't get karet. But lashes will always get, and he can always get out of karet. So that's kind of like it's up to you type of punishment. So therefore, one will always get lashes, and Rabbi Akiva does not consider that 2 punishments. On the other hand, capital punishment in a human court, that you cannot get that and also lashes, because even if a person makes teshuvah, still the betin, the human court, does not forgive the person. If a person murders someone, I'm really sorry, I won't do it again. You can make teshuvah all day long. You should make teshuvah. You should confess your sin and all that, but the court is still going to give you capital punishment. So because of that, since that's a guarantee punishment, that's it. That's the one punishment, and you don't give two punishments for one thing. And if it would be something that would be liable to both capital punishment and lashes, you only get capital punishment, that's it. And that's Rabbi Akiva's reasoning. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, Chayave karetot bichlal hayu v'lama yasat karet ba'achoto leduno bekaret v'lo b'malkut. Rabbi Yitzchak thinks that if someone is liable to karet, they get only karet. Literally, only one punishment totally, not lashes at all. And how does he know that? Because the liability for karet was part of a general rule. If you look in Vayikra 18, that lists all of the prohibited sexual relations, says at the end that all these things, one gets karet. So now I know that all the forbidden relations get karet. But then in chapter 20 of Vayikra, it mentions specifically someone who sleeps with his sister, that person gets karet. Now, why do you have to tell me achot gets karet if it's already part of the generality in Vayikra 18 that covers everything, including sister, in Vayikra 18? Oh, that comes to teach me that a sister gets only karet. Don't think that she gets karet and something else and lashes. It has to repeat it to say, oh, someone sleeps with a sister gets only karet, not lashes. And we learn from that as a paradigm to everything else, that just like a sister gets karet, does not get lashes, so too any prohibition for which one is liable to karet, one does not get lashes. That's Rabbi Yitzchak's opinion. And Rabbi Yitzchak then cannot be the author of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says, here are the people who get lashes. And then it lists people who get karet, meaning they get karet and lashes. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, they get karet but no lashes. And so Rabbi Akiva is the only possible author of our Mishnah. Now that we mentioned these three opinions, let's analyze what is the source of Rabbi Ishmael. Dichtiv, Im lo tishmor lasot et kol divrei Torah hazot, uchtiv hifla Adonai et makotecha. Hafla zo eni yodea mahi, keshu omer, v'hipilo hashofet v'kal lefanav, heve omer, hafla zo malkoti, uchtiv, im lo tishmor lasot et kol v'gomer. The pasuk at the end of Devarim, in the section of curses, says, if you will not observe to perform all the matters of this Torah. And the very next pasuk says, V'hifla, Hashem will give you wondrous makot, plagues. Now what does it mean? What's a wondrous makah? I don't know what that is. Oh, we see another pasuk in Devarim 25. Remember Devarim 25 too. That's going to be a key pasuk that says, V'pilo shovet v'ikal lefanav. It says, V'im bin hakot harasha, if someone is deserving of lashes, then the judge will make him lie down and he will beat him. This word vehipilo sounds like vehifla. It's actually a different root, but they have a lot of similar letters, and so we make a gezerah shava between them. And so just like vehipilo here is referring to lashes, so too vehifla is also referring to lashes. So this pasuk here back in Devarim 28, that says ifla, that one gets lashes. For what? Well, it says, Im lo tishmor lasot et kol, for all of the matters of the Torah. Therefore, you get lashes for all laws of the Torah. That's to be Ishmael. Now, he's going to qualify a little bit. So should one get lashes if one violates a misvat aseh? You have to do a brit milah. Okay, if you don't do it, are you going to get lashes? Because if you don't do it, you get karet. So is that going to include also misvat aseh, that if you don't do, you would get karet, you would get lashes? No. Im lo tishmor ketiv, uchtad bi abin amar bi ilai, adamar bi abin amar bi ilai, kol makom shenemar hishamer pen ve'al, eno ela lo ta'aseh. Because it says, im lo tishmor, if you do not fulfill. And Rabbi Abin said, name of Rabbi Ilai, that anytime the Torah says hishamer, the word pen or al, all these imply or connote that this is a misvat lo ta'aseh. And therefore, we apply this rule that one gets lashes only im lo tishmor for misvat lo ta'aseh. You don't get lashes for not fulfilling a misvat aseh. Good. What if it's a lo ta'aseh that has no action, like it's just speaking? So, would you get lashes for that? And the answer is no, because that same pasuk says la'asot ketiv. Only if you do an action that one is not allowed to do because of a lo ta'aseh. So that those are also excluded. How about lav shenitak la'aseh nameh? What about a negative prohibition that's attached to a positive prohibition? For example, Korban Pesach, you can't leave over any till the morning. You have to eat it all that night. Lo totiru menu ad boker. Well, what if you do leave it over? So the pasuk says, then if you do leave it over, then you have to make sure to burn it on the next day. So this is giving you, it says don't do it, but if you do it, there's a misvat aseh to burn it. There's a misvat lav shenitak la'aseh. So how about that? Would you get lashes? Generally the rule is no, you don't get lashes for lav shenitak la'aseh. But how would I know that? And the answer is dumiyad de lav de chasima. The very next law after that, those pesukim in Devarim 25, that was 25.2, this is 25.4, is the law of don't muzzle an ox. So we learned, since it says the law of lashes and then muzzling an ox, we learned that if someone muzzles an ox while it's threshing grain, that is a law ta'aseh, and it requires lashes. So we learned that lashes from here. But that also becomes a paradigm that one gets lashes only for laws that are like muzzling an ox. So, and the muzzling an ox is not a lav shenitak la'aseh. Therefore, any lav shenitak la'aseh is not included in lashes. Now that we mentioned this last answer, actually this last answer can solve all the problems before. So we don't even need the other things that we said. Since muzzling an ox is not a misvat aseh, so misvat aseh is no lashes, and it's not a lav shen bo maaseh, there's an action, you're putting a muzzle on the ox, and so those are also not included. So anything that is like muzzling an ox, one gets lashes for. And so this is the source for Rabbi Ishmael, who says that you get lashes for any lo ta'aseh, and that would include any lo ta'aseh for which one gets karet, you get karet and also lashes. And how about if it's a lo ta'aseh that you get capital punishment, you get capital punishment and lashes. Any lo ta'aseh, except for these categories that we just excluded, that is Rabbi Ishmael's source. Rabbi Akiva Mai Ta'ama. Okay, what's Rabbi Akiva's source? He says, Kedeh Rish'ato, back to the same pasuk in Devarim 25.2 that has to do with lashes. It says, you will give him lashes according to the measure of his wickedness. Mishum Risha Achat Achta Mechayevo V'yata Mechayevo Mishum Shete Rish'ayot. Kedeh Rish'ato is in singular. His wickedness, and we learn from here that we only give him one punishment for one crime, and you do not make him liable to two evil doings or two punishments for just one act. And that's a general rule. So that's why if someone is liable to capital punishment, then that's it. They only get capital punishment, and they're not going to get lashes as well. Rabbi Ishmael, hane mile mita mamon, o malkut mamon, hava mita malkut mita arichta hi. Rabbi Ishmael, don't you agree with this derasha and this rule kederishato? He does, but he limits it. When do you say you can't get two punishments for one crime? Only if the two punishment would be death penalty and paying. If you do something that would require both, you get death penalty only, and you don't have to pay. We saw example like stealing on Shabbat. As you pull the item out of his house, you are carrying and also stealing, so you only get capital punishment. Or if it's something that would require lashes and money, then also you only pay money, and that's it. You don't get lashes also. However, death penalty and lashes, so as long as it doesn't have to do with money, lashes and death penalty, that you can get both, because it doesn't violate the rule. You know why it doesn't violate the rule? It's actually like one extended death. It's a death penalty that starts with hitting the guy and ends with whatever you do, stoning or burning or hanging. And so this is one long process. Therefore, it's not a violation of shte rish ayot. It's not two punishments. It's one long punishment. He did something. He did a lo ta'aseh, for which generally one is liable to lashes, as Rabbi Ishmael learned that over here above, and it also is capital punishment. So we can give him both. It's not whereas these other ones, that and money is a separate. It's a completely different thing. You can't call it part of the same act. But hitting someone and then throwing stones on him, so that could be considered one long death penalty. Back to the Rabbi Akiva, you just said only one punishment, and from that you learned that if you get capital punishment, then no lashes. Wait a minute, how about karet? If someone gets karet, you should also say karet only and no lashes, like Rabbi Yitzchak. But Rabbi Akiva thinks you can get both. Okay, I know Rabbi Akiva, you gave a reason. You said if you make teshubah, then you won't get karet, because in heaven they will forgive you and you'll only get lashes. Okay, but that's only if you make teshubah. Hashtami had la'avdi. He didn't make teshubah. Let's say someone didn't make teshubah. He's going to get karet and also lashes. That's 2 punishments. So why should that be permitted? Amar Rabbi Abu beferush ribeta Torah chayabe karetot lemalkut tegamed le'aneh mi la'anecha. Rabbi Abu says, it's because there is a gezerah shava in the Torah between karet and malkut. Regarding karet, it says in Vayikra 20, regarding being with one's sister, it says v'nichretu, and that le'aneh, so it says the word le'aneh. And then back in the Devarim 25, the source for lashes, it says le'anecha. So here le'aneh and le'anecha, since those are the same, similar words, similar enough, we combine them together, and from there we learn that one can get karet and also malkut. Matkif la Rabbi Abba bar Memal ihachi chayave mitot betin name nigmar me'aneh mi le'anecha. Rabbi Abba bar Memal says, if you're going to learn gezerah shava like this, I can bring another one from people who are liable to capital punishment. The pasuk says regarding someone who worships idolatry that he gets executed, and it says the word me'aneh. So me'aneh is very similar to le'anecha that it says regarding lashes, and so just like me'aneh and le'anecha, this says lashes and this is a capital punishment. So we can learn from here that one gets lashes and capital punishment. So if you're going to make this gezerah shava, then you should make this gezerah shava too. But then Rabbi Akiva will end up agreeing with Rabbi Ishmael. So why would you make this one but not that one? Danin le'aineh mi le'ainecha, ven danin me'aineh mi le'ainecha. And the answer is these two are more similar. They both start with a lamed, le'aineh le'ainecha. So therefore we learn karet and lashes, those can go together. But this one starts with me'aineh for capital punishment. That's a different prefix altogether. So we're not going to learn make a gezerah shava has a different prefix. And then we respond to that. My nafkamine, is it really different? V'hatana deber Rabbi Ishmael. V'shaba kohen uba kohen. Zohi hashiba. V'zohi bi'ah. We do make a gezerah shava in a different case, even though it's 2 different words, Shav HaKohen and Ba HaKohen. The context here is leprosy of a house. The Kohen has to come back, he has to check the house, and he comes back in 7 days, and he looks and he sees, it's still there. He has to take some bricks out, and then he comes back 7 days later. And we learn that the procedure that he does when he comes back in 7 days is also repeated when he comes back in 14 days. How do you know that? Because it says, V'shaba Kohen Uba Kohen. And since these are similar enough, we make a gezerah shava and we apply one to the other. So you see here, we do make a gezerah shava, even though they're not exactly the same beginnings. Shab and Ba is different, but the Kohen is the same. So what would be wrong with making a gezerah shava from me'aineh to le'ainecha? Should be fine. Ve'od ligmor me'aineh mi le'aineh deha gemur le'aineh mi le'ainecha. And furthermore, you could make a double gezerah shava if you really wanted to, and you could learn me'aineh that it says regarding capital punishment to le'aineh that it says regarding karet with a sister, because those, look at the words, are exactly the same, aineh, aineh, just a small prefix difference. And then le'aineh has another gezerah shava to le'ainecha that it says regarding lashes. And so if you really want to make it more similar, okay, fine. Le'ainecha, le'aineh has the same prefix, but me'aineh, le'aineh has the same word. So if you want to make a double gezerah shava, one way or another, you should be able to learn that capital punishment and lashes then should also be included, and you get both. קיבלה מיניה רבי שמואל בר רב יצחק כדי רשעתו משום רשעה אחת אתה מחייבו ואתה מחייבו משום שתי רשעיות ברשעה מסורה לבית דין הכתוב מדבר. So now we have a different explanation for Rabbi Akiva. Again, we're going back to Rabbi Akiva, who said that you can't get 2 punishments for one sin, but that will only apply to karet and not to mitat betin. Why? Because we have a tradition from Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak that says kedei rishato, that you get one punishment, but not two punishments for the same sin. That's talking about a punishment that's given by a bet din. So lashes and capital punishment are both given by a bet din. A bet din cannot give two punishments. That's only one or the other. If they're liable to capital punishment, then they don't get lashes. If it's not capital punishment, okay, then they can get lashes. But karet, that is given by a heavenly court. Heavenly court has its own system. So we don't have to correlate the two systems. The heavenly court will decide whatever it gives, but the bet din can give one. Bet din can only give one, but the bet din can give one, even if bet din shalmala is going to give another. That's a separate counting, and that explains why, according to the Rabbi Akiva, one does not get capital punishment and lashes. Bet din can only give one, but you can get karet and also lashes, and so that's the source for the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rava Amar, Atru beliktala kule alma la peligi de'en loke umet. Ki pelige te'atru be lemalkut. Rabbi Yishmael sabar lav shenitan azharat mitat betin lokin alav. Ve Rabbi Akiva sabar lav shenitan azharat mitat betin en lokin alav. Rava has a completely different interpretation of both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva that we saw in the Baraita above. And he says, in a case where, let's say someone is violating a crime for which one is liable to capital punishment. He is cooking on Shabbat, and then the witnesses see him and they give him a warning and they say, don't you know, this is prohibited and you're going to get capital punishment for that. In that case, everybody agrees that he will not get lashes, he only gets capital punishment. Even Rabbi Yishmael, you thought Rabbi Yishmael said that you get capital punishment and lashes? No, he didn't say that. If it's a regular case where the warning fits the crime, it's a capital crime, and he gets a warning for capital punishment, he gets capital punishment only, and everybody would agree, no lashes. Ki pelige datru be lemalkot. Rather, the machloket is in this more complicated case. You see someone cooking on Shabbat. The witnesses say, hey, it's Shabbat today. That's not allowed. And if you do that, you're going to get lashes. The witnesses made a mistake. They downgraded the punishment. So they didn't warn him for capital punishment. So therefore, we can't kill him, because maybe if they said, you're going to get capital punishment, they would say, oh, then we're going to stop. But they didn't say that. They said only lashes. So now the question is, can you give him even lashes? Rabbi Yishmael says, this is alav, shenitan lahazat betin, lokin alav. Any negative commandment where the Torah gives a warning. Anytime the Torah has a punishment, has to have two pisukim. One to say that it's not allowed, azhara, and one to say that one gets the capital punishment. So you can't give capital punishment unless in the Torah itself you have two different pisukim. This is a little confusing because it had atru, which means the witnesses of the warning of the witnesses. Azhara over here means the warning within the Torah itself. Anyway, Rabbi Yishmael says, if there is a negative commandment where the Torah gives a warning and says this is prohibited because it's going to be capital punishment, one still can get lashes if the warning of the witnesses was only for lashes. Then, even though they only gave the lesser warning, that's included in the more difficult punishment, the more severe punishment. Really, he's supposed to get capital punishment. Okay, so certainly that will include a less severe punishment. If the witnesses only said lashes, he gets lashes. That's what Rabbi Yishmael meant when he says one can get lashes in cases of capital punishment. Only if you don't get capital punishment, because the warning was only lashes, you get lashes. However, Rabbi Akiva says that if there is a prohibition where the warning in the Torah is for capital punishment, then they only get any punishment if the witnesses give the correct warning, capital punishment. If the witnesses make a mistake and say, oh, you're going to get lashes for this, then you don't get lashes, because that warning, both of the witnesses and the witnesses said capital said lashes, but the warning in the Torah was only a warning for capital punishment, not a warning for lashes, and therefore one does not get anything at all. That's what the Baraita is talking about according to Rava. Now we ask, Rabbi Akiva, Yachi chayve karatot nameh lav shenitan lazarat karet hu. According to that logic, Rabbi Akiva, then that should be the same should apply to karet. Someone is doing something for which one is liable to karet. He's about to eat a chaylev, and you say, hey, don't you know that's going to be chayav karet? Then certainly he gets karet. Everybody agrees to that. But what if he downgrades and says, if you eat that, you're going to get lashes? So then why don't you say the same logic? According to Rabbi Akiva, the Torah only gave a warning for that person for getting karet. But the warning of the witnesses was less than that, and so you don't give him lashes then either. But Rabbi Akiva, we saw, says that you do give lashes for a karet prohibition. Amar le Rav Mordechai le Rav Asher, Hachi amar avimi mehagronya mishemeh de Rava. Chayave karetot la sirichi hatra'a shere pesach umila anash af al pi shelo hizhir. So here we have an answer in the name of Rava that things that are liable to karet, one does not need a hatrah. You don't need the Torah, hatrah in the Torah. You don't need the Torah to say that this is prohibited and you're going to get karet. How do you know you don't need an azara for someone to be liable to karet? Because look at Korban Pesach and Milah. Those are the only two misvot aseh that if you don't do them, you get karet. There's no azara in the Torah because there's no warning because they're not lo ta'aseh. So there's no language of warning regarding them. And yet, if you don't do Korban Pesach or don't do Brit Milah purposefully, then one gets karet. So you see that you don't need the azara in the Torah in order for one to be liable to karet. Therefore, since the Torah does have an azara regarding karet, it must be that azara applies to lashes. And that's why Rabbi Akiva says you can give lashes to someone who's liable to karet. If the witnesses say that, you're only supposed to get lashes, you give lashes because the Torah does have a warning for that. Whereas the warning for capital punishment, I need for capital punishment, I cannot apply it to lashes. Then we ask, V'dilma azhara lekorban, teha pesach umila delet behu azhara la maite korban. Hold on, maybe the warning, the prohibition in the Torah related to karet, it's true. It's not to give the person karet because Pesach and Milah can get karet, but rather maybe that prohibition is ordered to make a person liable to a korban if he does that lo ta'aseh by mistake. Because after all, Pesach and Brit Milah, there's no warning there, but you don't bring a korban. You don't bring korban hatat if you didn't bring korban Pesach, or you don't bring korban hatat if you didn't do Brit Milah. And so you see those two, you can get karet without a warning. So you don't need a warning in order to get karet. But maybe the karet regarding the lo ta'aseh of karet is not there for karet, and is not there either to say that you can get lashes. Maybe that warning is there in order to teach that you bring a korban b'shogeg. And the answer is no. Hatam lav hainu tama. That's not the reason. That's not how we learn that you do need a korban hatat for lo ta'aseh. Ela mishum di'itkash kol haTorah kola la'avodah zara. Ma avodah zara sheva al ta'aseh. Av kol sheva al ta'aseh la'puk yahane dekum aseh. Rather, we learn the liability for a korban chatat because the whole Torah is compared to avodah zara. And regarding avodah zara, which is something that you're supposed to not do. It's a lo ta'aseh. You're supposed to sit and not do avodah zarah. But if you do it by mistake, you bring korban chatat. So too, every lo ta'aseh, if you do it by mistake, then you bring korban chatat. And that will exclude Pesach and Brit Milah, where that's an aseh. That's why there's no korban chatat. So therefore, you see that the laws of korban chatat and distinguishing between aseh and lo ta'aseh, we learn from this similarity to avodah zarah. And so now we're back to this proper answer that korban Pesach and Milah, you get karet, even though it doesn't say an azhara. So the azhara that's said regarding karet can teach us that one gets lashes for that. So that would be an answer according to Rava. But now we bring a completely different explanation. Ravina amar le'olam kedamrina mikarashim asu teshuvah betin shamala mochalin lahen. Ravina says, I want to go back all the way back to the explanation that was said in the original Baraita for Rabbi Akiva, where it says that there's a difference between midat betin and karet. because according to the Rabbi Akiva, if one makes teshubah, then the heavenly court will forgive the karet. So that's why, since they can forgive the karet, so that's not considered a double punishment, because maybe he did teshubah. And if he did teshubah, so there's no karet, so he gets lashes. Unlike mitat betin, where even if you do teshubah, the betin's still going to kill the person, and therefore you're never going to have lashes and also mitat betin. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. Now on that we asked, Ma'iramat, ha la'avu teshubah. Wait, what if he didn't make teshubah? If he doesn't make teshubah, then he gets karet, and he's also going to get lashes. That's double punishment. Ravina says to that, la pesika mileta lekaret. The matter is not clear cut regarding karet. Who knows? Maybe he made teshubah. Maybe he's going to make teshubah in 1 second from now. So since there's always the possibility of making teshubah, so karet is always wavering. It's always a possibility that the karet will go away. Since the karet is always conditional, therefore we ignore it. It makes sense to ignore it and say there's one punishment, one definite punishment, and that will be lashes. That's why Rabbi Akiva says that one does get punishment for things that one's liable to get it. One does get lashes, but not so for mitat betin. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.